You are listening to Tales from the Vale, hosted by local pizza proprietor Tony Michelot
and Lee Gilligan, peripatetic wine industry veteran. A podcast where we have conversations with wine industry personalities,
passionate foodies,
business identities,
and community leaders who live, work and play in and around McLaren Vale
and the Fleurieu Peninsula.
Tales from the Vale.
Steve, did I ever give you that photo of you and your jocks in that?
Oh, no.
In that
Fermenter?
In Fermenter?
No, you didn't. Someone gave me a bottle of that wine. I had trepidation about drinking it.
I've got a copy of that photo somewhere.
Well, you've given it away. We're talking with Steve Pannell.
Yes.
Celebrated winemaker.
Steve Pannell.
Pannell. Yeah,
No,
Pannell or Pannell?
I don't care.
We
were having this discussion.
We just had that discussion a minute ago.
I mean, it is double N, double L. So
I'll say
Pannell.
Michelot, not Matolo. I will have that discussion. I like to have a separation to it anyway, for obvious reasons.
well, there you go. It's not channel.
I echo. Channel. Pannell.
Take us through your wine career.
A Pannell beater.
Can we get serious now?
That's what he can call his marketing department. Steve Pannell beaters.
No, that's OH&S.
Which is one thing you hate, isn't it?
I hate all bureaucracy and stupidity. Like undermining people that, we're
going to get along
everyone
just
has
fine.
a common sense.
Yeah. So
There you go.
Thanks, mate.
let's go right back.
Yeah.
Right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Did you work in retail in Sydney?
Yeah, I did. I resisted the wine industry for as long as I possibly could because Dad was being a doctor during the week, and on the weekends he'd go to the farm, and one day a week he'd go as well to the vineyard, and everything was done by hand. So every bottle was hand polished, hand labelled, put in boxes. We get home from school and there'd be a ute full of boxes of wine that we'd have a list of names and addresses that I'd have to write on the top of these boxes. And one of them came back the full circle when I went to Hardy's. Bob Hardy came in and he had a case of 1977 Mosswood with my handwriting, Mr. Bob Hardy. And said,
So this is your father, obviously.
Dad started Mosswood. So he planted the second vineyard, I suppose. There's big contention about this. But anyway, he planted probably the second vineyard in Margaret River.
Wow.
And so he started Mosswood. He was responsible for getting David Gregg to Vass Felix, who was the winemaker there that led that. Vass Felix was the first. And so I grew up in that, and we were indoctrinated, I suppose, into it. He didn't have trimming machines. He had 3 children. And we
Cheap labour.
it was.
It makes sense because another love of yours that people know about is surfing.
Yeah.
And that obviously started there as well.
Yeah, that started there.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was more when we'd come home from the vineyard. The thing that he'd do is take us to Yellingup and we'd body surf. We'd get an ice cream and go body surfing. And so my love of waves came from there. Like if you didn't hang on to the bottom, you were going to get ripped.
Yeah.
And so I loved that side of it. But the only way out of not going to the vineyard was to play sport. So I played everything from table tennis to volleyball to like hockey in the morning and
like
football in the
You're
afternoon.
an escape program.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like, I hate this.
So you just ended up with exactly where you didn't want to be.
Well, I said I never want my own label. I never want to be in the wine industry. He filled out what I was going to do at uni and like filled me in to do chemistry, physics, mathematics and computer architecture. And I said, well, I don't want to be a science teacher and I'm not really passionate about any of this. So I moved to Sydney and was working for a guy called Jim Whittle in a bottle shop that used to sell Mosswood. And actually Hugh and Hook was working in that bottle shop as well. And
How old were you, class, at this point?
I was 19.
Okay, so you moved to Sydney. You've been to Sydney before then? With
No,
your,
never.
No?
So
Oh,
I
wow.
got there
Cool.
like second day. He said, you got to do this delivery to the Macquarie Centre in the middle of the city. And I said, yeah, where's that? He took me outside and said, see that tall building? There. And so he just dumped me.
Without giving away your age either, but like what year are we talking here? Just so we can
No,
have a
that's
visual,
fine. You can give away my
visual
age.
thing.
So, yeah, that was 1984.
1984 Sydney.
Yeah. King's
Love it.
Cross.
So good.
Oxford Street.
I'm there now. So
Yeah.
we're starting a movie for everyone.
Yeah, no worries. Well, the Hoodoo Gurus used to come and buy from the bottle shop. Brad used to come in all the time.
The bottle shop was in the Cross?
Yeah, like
What a wild
on South Dowling Street, just up from St Vincent's Hospital.
Do you know where that is, Lee? 'Cause
Yes,
you're
I
an
do.
ex-Sydney sider.
I'm an ex-Sydney sider.
Yeah, and we used to live in the Vic Barracks opposite. And so he wouldn't pay me, but he said, you can drink whatever you like. And so he had this.
It's basically the same thing at that age.
Yes, exactly.
So you'd rather pay me or give you booze. Same
Yes, booze. Well, at that time it was 82 Bordeaux, and he was importing a hell of a lot of it. And so, yeah, all those wines I got to see. Yeah, I got to see amazing wines through that time.
Which is kind of like an education.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, if you want one thing, if you gave me a winemaker and said, okay, here's a person with top scores, or here's the person that drunk the 20 best wines in the world, I'll take the person that's drunk the best 20 wines in the world, because you've got this, you know where you're going, rather than, you know, what is this all about?
So what prompted the move from?
I moved across to another bottle shop run by Gordon Begg up in Bondi. Gordon. So I was working with Gordon and a lady called Lynette Hazard.
Yes.
And so I was working with those two. And then Gordon sold the shop. He had a couple of shops to Lion Nathan, and Lion Nathan gave me a scholarship to go and do something in the wine industry. And I decided, well, I'll go to Roseworthy, because my parents were nagging me about not having a degree. And I thought, well, I'll do the winemaking course because it's an extra year over the marketing course, and then I'll do a proper marketing course with the idea to go back to sell wine. But I got caught in this. As soon as I got there, it was boring the first year. So I went and bought a ton of Pinot from Cajamadio in the hills to make a wine.
Cajageni, love that.
Yeah, correct. And made a wine, and then that was it. I was just gone, because I couldn't. There was so much to know and so much to understand about what makes a good grape, and then how you maximise turning that grape into the best wine you can. Is this journey that never stops? It's like you never know it all. Never.
And from Roseworthy, did you go and work for Warren Randall?
Yeah, so I was at Roseworthy, and I'd never been part of working for a big company. So I decided to go and work for Sepultz at Great Western, and then Tony Royal and Warren Randall were there, and I think I annoyed the hell out of both of them, asking them so many questions, that I worked there. And then when Warren came back here to take over at Garrett's, he sort of asked me to come and run night shift, so I ran night shift, and that's the first vintage I did in the Vale. That I think it's 89 or 90. I think 90.
90.
So, yeah. And then from there, moved to Wirra Wirra.
Yep.
With you, 91, 92. Yep. And then from there, Petaluma bought Tim Napstein's. They asked me to move up there, so I was there 93, 94. And then from there, Tim James and Peter Dawson approached me to go to Hardy's. And so I started there in 95 and was there for 9 years, right through to 2003.
And you had a pretty successful stint at Hardy's, didn't you?
Yeah, we were lucky. I mean, Peter was fabulous. He never really told me what to do. He had faith to sort of, because I threw out all the oak chips and I threw out all the American oak, and we got rid of the heading boards, and we did a lot of radical things. And you can, in a company that large, we sort of sat down and went, right, this is our chance to really understand winemaking. And I sort of equate it a bit like playing darts with your eyes closed. Occasionally you try all these crazy things, and the thing I've always had with anything really is the most difficult thing is not what I know, it's what I don't know. Yeah. And so this learning of what you don't know, what happens if you add too much sulfur, what happens if you add too much acid, what happens if you chill a ferment down the middle, what happens if you do all this stuff. We did all these sort of crazy experiments and learnt a lot about winemaking, like get the same vineyard, pick it 2 days apart, 2 days, 2 days, 2 days, 2 days, and keep going right through to 16 Beaumet. And so we did all these crazy things to learn. And Robbie Mann was there, Kerry Thompson, who else? Larry Cherubino, Simon White. There's all these people that we're all working together as this crew. And it was great fun. It was really, really good fun.
All the while, what are your parents saying? Oh, they're over there in Margaret River going, what's going on, mate?
Not really. I mean,
in terms of you're going to come and make some wine here? Or?
No. My brother had sort of gone with my dad more than so he had Mosswood. He sold it. That was the funny side of it. So Dad sold it when I was in high school because he sort of said, do you want to do this? And I said, no, I don't want to be a winemaker, and neither did my brother. Mm-hmm. And he sold it to Keith Mugford. But Keith Mugford, his dad was the doctor in McLaren Vale, and his house is on Tatachilla Road. Yeah. So it's like we changed lives. We exchanged them. I moved because my first house is on the base of just at the start of Tatachilla Road as well. So it's sort of like we swapped lives. Yeah. And then I took up his identity and
parallel
he took up mine.
Wineverse.
Yeah, correct. And so, no, they were always – a lot of people sort of said when you want to come home, but I came here and fell in love with this place. I mean, yeah, it's proximity to the city, it's closeness to the ocean, and that's, I suppose, the strongest thing in my life is I've always lived next to the ocean, and it is this grounding force. The greatest thing I do most days of my life is just go down to the ocean and jump in it.
Where are the waves better?
The funniest sort of epitaph to all that is my son's now studying winemaking. It's his first year, and he did a vintage over it. And since they were 3, I was really upset that no one taught me how to surf. So since my daughter and my son were 3, I'd have them on a board and pushing them. And so
I've always seen you. I've seen you often at the.
Yeah. So he's now surfing, and
I'm not surfing, by the way. Like, see with hey, g'day, mate. It's usually when I'm just getting off the car park.
No, so this is as soon as he's finished winemaking, he's moving to Margaret River, and he will. That's
what I was going to get to. That's so good.
That's what he wants. It's just like
fair enough.
he's going out with a girl who's from Margaret River. It's just like, I'm not going to be able to stop
You get
this.
winery number 2, site number 2.
Let's see, because I said
Multi-regional
my
brand.
wife sort of said to him, "Oh, do you want to do this?" And it's like, "No, I don't want to do what you're doing." It's just like, cool.
Yeah. That's what happens. You see what happens.
A
Though.
chip
It's
off
good.
the old
Yeah.
block.
Yeah, I mean, I think our children absorb more than we
Yeah.
think they do. Yeah.
Never give them credit for.
Yeah.
So you guys used to work together in Wirra Wirra,
Yep.
correct?
Yeah, couple of years.
And what were you doing at Wirra Wirra? This is after
Putting up with Ben Riggs.
Yes. I remember Steve came to see me, and I was a GM then, I think.
Yes,
and
you
he
were.
said, I've been offered a job. And I said, who with? Where? And he said, Claire, in Napstein. And he said, do you think I should take it? And I said, mate, at least you'll be the winemaker there. not the ass assistant
Yes.
winemaker.
Yes.
I love Benny, but Benny wasn't going anywhere.
No.
He was welded to the
He
foundation.
had his feet firmly nailed to the floor at Wirra
Yeah.
Wirra. So I feel partly responsible for him. No, I don't at all.
like you guys let me make Pinot, and there was so many people that were so supportive in that environment. I mean, I'm, being with Emily, I still miss Emily all the time.
Yeah.
Working with Emily at night time, and Trotty had such a great way about encompassing how the people that work in that winery, there's somehow that joie de vivre, or that feeling that of all of you working together comes out in the wine. So it's absolutely vital that you breed this culture of people. That's important to the way that a wine tastes. You can't just be an asshole because you'll make shit wine, right?
I love that.
Basically.
Oh, that's so good.
And so he taught me. He was really, really into that, and that was cool.
I like that. I think it's so many things to like a team environment, whether it be a kitchen or band or whatever, or sporting club, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like if everyone's getting along, if everyone's gluing,
Yeah.
usually the end product's going to be good.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. And it's funny when we're ever in tastings and blind tasting, my wife,
You're
more
like
than
this,
Mike,
you go,
and she'll
you
just
know
go,
this-
you made this. It's
I
like,
can taste that the winery did not get along.
Yes.
Because someone's not like gluing.
No. Well, it is. It's important. Or you've got to spend so much time together
Yeah.
that it does actually make sense.
Yeah, and is that something that's attracted you to it? Like look, I have a different perspective on some of the people that own and operate wineries and brands, and I always said this to customers and stuff that I love, and I actually liked it quite a lot because during vintage, Steve will come in covered in grape juice, red arms, that come in, grab some pizzas, and walk out, and they'll be like, "See, there's a winemaker," and you'll see people who look at that. Astonished by it. I'm like, yeah, it's a wine region, but it's happening. But you're in there. What my point is, your name on the label, and you're still in there doing it. Because you can and because you love it. Like you must love that camaraderie. Like
there's this thing called the Peter Principle. So it's do you know this? So the Peter Principle is basically everybody is promoted to the point of incompetence.
Competence, that's right.
So actually what you end up starting to learn, there's a great saying about this guy who made hats. He said I love to make hats, and first of all I made hats, and then I owned a hat company. And so you get promoted away from, and that's what happened at Hardy's.
What you love doing.
What I love doing is making wine.
Yeah.
And I got promoted to this position where I was managing people and managing wineries and telling other people to make wine. And in essence, that's why I left Hardy's, because my journey with making wine hadn't stopped. And the bit that I get most pleasure from is making wine and getting dirty and getting down. And the reason I can make wine is because I continue to do that all the time and learning. It's different every year, and understanding how that works with a vineyard sense. And I use other fruit trees and other things to understand what's going on in a vineyard as well. And so all of those parameters.
Like reading what they're doing.
You're reading, you're connected to nature. And I think that's what Like the reason I surf is because there's nothing else you can do other than surf and watch waves, and it's meditative in a way. And it's the same with growing things. You are connected to the soil and the land, and that gives you, I don't know, it's like it revitalizes me through my feet. And so I live on this land, and it is amazing that you stick a stick in the ground. 3 years later, that's growing grapes, and then it's making wine that's making people happy. And so that whole process, I know it's probably primitive, or there's something very real about that
You're not the only
process.
person that said that, but even Steve Grimley said that to me once. I'm picking up a pizza or whatever, and he's like, I'm happiest when my shoes are off and I'm like walking amongst the rows, and it's something about it that's just really, lack of a better word, grounding.
Yeah, I mean, it does give our crazy lives purpose.
So where are you happiest? Are you happy in the vineyard or in the winery, or combination of the two? It doesn't matter.
The two are intrinsically interlinked. I suppose we've spent every cent that we own in buying vineyards. We've now got about 105 acres. And so that's to control the process from the beginning through to the end, because this idea that a lot of winemakers think grapes grow on the back of a truck is I think, a problem that's going on. And so we need more people that grow grapes that make
Can you
wine.
expand on that? Do you mean that I could just procure the grapes and then we just put a winery and we've got a wine brand?
All grapes are a bit the same. Like there's not these differences that I suppose you see in Europe, where this concept of terroir, where wine tastes like it comes from a place. That is 100% doable here, and absolutely the next agenda for this industry the Australian wine industry going forward is to make wine that it tastes like it comes from somewhere. Because the only and the most unique thing about wine, and other food things try to say they do it, like this Berkshire pig comes from here or this potato comes through. You can't taste that. But in tea and in wine, they taste like they comes from somewhere. Nowhere else can taste like that. And so all we do to a degree is get in the way of that. And so in Australia, I think people, it's who made a wine, what they made it from, and where they made it from, in that priority. Whereas for the rest,
you think it should be the other way around?
Totally.
Yeah.
You look at the rest of the world, in anywhere you look, it's where it comes from, what you made it from, and then who made it.
It's very true.
The cult of winemaker in Australia and I guess in America has become an overriding factor in the wine industry.
I have a deeper sort of theory about it, that I think our, how can I say, fraught or fractured relationship with our land, and this relates to the way we treat First Nations people as well. Actually, we act sometimes like we rent this place, not that it's our real home. And so until we repair that connection to land, then we will start to make wine that resembles that land better. And sort of there's less winemaking, like the simple idea that why do I want my wine to taste like a French or American tree when I'm trying to get it to taste like somewhere where it comes from. And that requires first less winemaking, not more viticulture, not more winemaking, and sort of getting away from the necessity to add something. So that requires the right variety to be there. So you don't have to add acid, you don't have to over-ripen it. The way that Australian Shiraz is being made presently is to over-ripen it, to dilute it, to acidify it so that it'll finish fermenting, and then filling it full of tannin from a chestnut tree and oak. That's not great wine. That's not what great wine is about. And I think that's got to be our pursuit.
You know, with the types of grape varieties you're talking about, obviously we can't, just stemming from that, obviously we can't turn around and go, here's a native variety to Australia.
No.
So we can use Grenache, for instance, which I know you're a huge fan of.
Yeah.
And they're very beautiful, by the way.
Yeah,
so congratulations for the ones that you have made. That seems to be, from what little knowledge I know from having these conversations, it seems to be like a really good mirror of where it's growing. Like it can be really different. Is there anything you can elaborate on add to that?
Yeah,
with
so
Grenache?
that variety, and it's the reason it's good is like we very rarely have to add any acid to it, and you really don't have to over ripen it. You've got to get it at the right time. And
is it a tough variety to grow? Or?
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. Like, it's really the hardest grape variety I make, because it can jump, it'll jump its ripeness. Like it can go from 13 potential alcohol to 16 potential alcohol in 4 days if you're not on it.
Okay,
and
so
you've got to hand pick it because it's bush vines. And so you need to be very organised, and you need to have a very strong sense of what you're doing.
That was the thing, bush vines. I've always been a believer that Grenache should only be bush vine.
Yeah.
Trellising is not a good idea.
I'm the opposite.
You believe in trellising?
No, I just like.
He wants to have a back.
No.
It's got to serve.
No. I think, look, what tends to happen is that what you're trying to do is get a fruit tree to ripen its fruit all on the same day. You've got heaps of fruit trees down there and everywhere. How often do you walk out to that fruit tree and every piece of fruit is ripe on that day? That's what we do to a grapevine. So in order to make that fruit tree ripen at the same time, we need to manipulate it and take out variables. So each cane must be the same length. Each cane must have the same fruit load, usually one bunch. It must turn at the same time. So
be open enough, like facing the sun.
it must
so
have the same exposure.
Face.
Correct. So once you do that, then you can bring ripeness down, because what you tend to do is over-ripen the majority of the fruit to ripen the green
I love
minority.
how technical it gets. And this is the challenge, right? This is what you love about it, because that's just one of a million variables.
Correct.
Like, it's just a never-ending pursuit.
Yes. It is there
must
is
be a
no
madman.
No, there's no perfect in it.
Yep.
And that's great. That's fine. I
So
have
the
no problem with
variance
that.
on one vine could be quite a lot. You could have
you
from
can
bottom
have,
grape to the top grape. I never even thought of a variable.
you could have
like
it
that.
from 12 on the same bunch. You could have it if we have a bad flowering, or if we have a weather that's difficult that stretches all these processes out, then it becomes more uneven, not less. The best years are those, and Tim Napstein said this to me quite often, it's the years with the more crop that are the better years than low crop. And so if you've got a decent crop load or a balanced crop load, that means you'll get hang time. And it's like leaves are no different to a solar collector generating power. So the longer you've got that hang time, the more flavour you're going to generate in it. So most years, whether you've got a very tiny crop through a whole lot of different circumstances, they'll ripen too fast, so they won't ripen in the right way.
Because a lot of people talk about with low yield, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a concentration.
Yes, there is that concentration.
Is that just a sales technique to be like, look, there's not a lot there, but God, it's good?
Yeah, and that's what I said. People go, oh, I love small berries. And I said, so the ultimate wine is no juice. So what you got to understand is there's a balance in this. It's like, it's always a healthy berry with a healthy canopy, and you want balance. That's one of the biggest things I learned going to Bordeaux is like our Cabernet has these tiny little berries. It's like Bordeaux's not like that. It's much bigger. So, if you stress a vine out, what it's going to want to do is not ripen fruit, but ripen seed because it wants to survive.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm not making wine out of seeds. I'm making wine out of juice.
So how do you go with something like that on sand, and how do you go with how do you approach irrigation? I should say.
I mean, I think if you want one change, the Australian wine industry that's changed it more than any other, it's the advent of irrigation, because the guys that got here the first time had to plant vineyards without irrigation. They picked the best soils that had good natural water holding capacity and depth. These days you can just about plant a vineyard on a gravel road and grow it, but is it the right place to put it? I'm not sure. So most of the very, very good sites where they had good soil depth and good clay or good soils and good moisture holding capacity to plant a stick and then grow it dry have been taken up when we first got here.
Yeah, right. Okay. And is this why? No, I was going to say, but like Grenache.
But apricot, Grenache is difficult because the sandy soils, you can't plant Shiraz because it's not drought tolerant enough. The old guys used to say the only thing that grows in sand are apricots and Grenache.
There's plenty of apricots.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
You're a lover of I want to say like alternate varieties or Mediterranean varieties. Is there a reason?
Yeah.
What's the ethos? What's going on?
Well, I mean, it's like you. If I talk to you about music, where you get stuck in one genre.
Don't talk about music.
The world is obsessed with basically 4 or 5 French grape varieties.
Yes.
Now, wine came from Greece. From Eurasia originally, and then funneled its way. Portugal has 300 different grape varieties. So what I find that I think I'm naive in is like I'm obsessed with one part of wine, where wine culturally exists in so many other places. And presently, what we're trying to do is make a wine that mimics a French wine. And I don't understand that. There's this obsession with Pinot and Chardonnay. I've got that. But there's so many other wines. It's an easier route to make something that's unique. And let me try to explain that and what I'm saying. There's 2 ways to go about this. One is plant grape varieties that come from a climate similar to where we come. Most of the grape varieties we planted in Australia come from the northern part of Europe, which is wetter, more fertile soils. And we've taken these varieties and dumped them into our landscape and go, off you go. Whereas if we take a variety that comes from some island in Corsica or Sardinia or places like that, and Sardinia is a very good example because Sardinia is the only place in Europe that actually has soils of a similar to age because it used to be a seamount in the middle of the Mediterranean. So it grows those grape varieties. So we take those, but not only do they grow well in those places, the people like to drink the wine that goes with the food. And I think your climate, it drives the food you eat. And the thing that used to drive me nuts is like, we live next to an ocean. I catch a lot of squid and seafood, and I make 15.5% alcohol Shirazes. How does this
work?
So is wine a food or is it a status symbol? What does it do? I mean, culturally, it has to fit, first of all, with how you live. And, you know, I find an indictment on the Australian wine industry. The largest selling white wine in this country still comes from New Zealand. It's like, how silly are we about, like, let's grow wines that, first of all, we want to drink with the food that we want to eat. And the big driver is Asian style of food as well. And Chile, how do we make wine? So for me, that's an opportunity to take to the rest of the world. We shouldn't think about trying to copy someone else's style. We should be thinking about our own unique. But then within that, there's the ludicrous and the crazy. And the easiest variety to understand what I'm trying to say with that is Riesling. If Riesling was not planted here in this country, would we even plant Riesling in the Eden Valley or Clare Valley, understanding that it comes from Germany and Alsace? We wouldn't. And so, but we've still planted this variety in these places, and we've made a wine that is uniquely ours, not copying anybody else's. And I think that is probably the more valid and the more important way to go. So we still need crazy people that are experimenting with crazy varieties, making these new styles of wine.
Different representations of them, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, with that sort of, you must, for what you try to do, what I feel like you're trying to do, there must be some sort of limitation on that. No, but
my staff were leaving.
Well, but have you committed to, like, you know, what you want to make, where your vineyards shine the best, a wine that truly represents that sense of place? Like, do you go, okay, well, the best grape variety for me to do that and concentrate all my efforts in this amount of years I've got to do it?
Yeah,
that's do you know?
I know what you're saying.
Are you honing in?
There's a difficulty with that. I mean, because
you can always, you're like you're in a candy shop because there are like all these grape varieties, and for someone like you,
it looks a bit like that, but there is a problem with that. It's hard to get a lot of these varieties. Not all of them are brought into Australia. So as an industry, I think that's one of the areas we've really failed, that the industry itself doesn't own a library of grape varieties. And we need like a seed bank or a vine arc or a vine library.
Because how do we now? There are like people that own licenses, right?
Yes, people own licenses, and that you can't propagate that, and you've got to go on a waiting list to get, like, there's a new variety, Nerello Mascalese, that comes from Sardinia, from Sicily.
But can I not go to your vineyard and just cut a few things off and put them in? No, you've paid for the right to only have that.
They've licensed the whole thing, and so they will license the propagation. You look at the wheat industry. They've spent tens of millions of dollars to get the right varieties in the right places to do the right things. And that's where Australia, we've been interested in marketing our way out of problems, not growing better wine and making better wine out of our issues, I suppose. And I think it all starts with the grape varieties. And I think we'd light a fire under this industry if you could take the best varieties. Like, I want to get a Greek variety here called Zinamavro, and I love these wines. They're a bit like Nebbiolo in a warm climate. And yet the hurdles that you have to go through to make this happen. There's a white grape variety that's from Croatia called Grk. And it's the only grape variety in the world without a vowel, the GRK.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic white wine. And yet to get it here, and you need to plant it in amongst male plants to cross-pollinate it. And so I'd love to get that. There's so many of these things. And I haven't touched Turkish grape varieties and that's what I'm saying. There's a world of wine that is absolutely enormous, and we myopically look at this little bit. And I understand why. The French have done very, very well at propagating their idea of what wine is, because
they've already sifted through it all.
Yeah.
Yes, because I basically say, you name to me a low-yielding Italian grape variety with small berries that don't exist, because it's not.
I thought I was on the spot there.
No.
You're waiting for an answer, please turn the headlights off.
No, because culturally, Italian culture is not about controlling this thing to grow.
It's big and bombastic.
Exactly. It's exuberant. It's ebullient. It's like there's this Italian culture that comes with this. Most of the time when you're growing Italian varieties, you're cutting things off and trying to keep it under control. What the French did is they picked grape varieties that don't mutate widely. They're very easy to make wine out of because they've got moderate to small size berries. There's no huge clonal variation, and they're easy to make wine of. So it's easy to replicate. It's easier to replicate that than it is. I mean, Sangiovese is one of my great loves, but it's so hard to do. We just... that's one of my failures. Never got there.
In the vineyard or?
Oh, it's just the clones we've got here aren't right. And when you look at the variation that they've got in theirs, and I think in Tuscany there's this humidity. Some things are just not doable, and that place is a very special place for growing that particular variety.
The reason why, and I really appreciate that, can I just, the reason why I guess I'm asking about these grape varieties, and we've spoken about this a few times, Lee, with some other guests, is, and you touched on it, like, are we selling a region? Are we selling a winemaker or a variety?
Correct.
It's just, McLaren Vale can sometimes, I think maybe can come across as confusing as to what a McLaren Vale wine is, like what variety is. What do you hang the hat on and say, like, Killer Valley Riesling or Barossa Shiraz, like McLaren Vale's got this.
But see, I see that in the opposite. See, I see that as an opportunity. Our ability to experiment is much easier because we don't have that.
Yeah.
So because we haven't nailed our cross to this Shiraz, I suppose, a bit like the Barossa has, people are willing to experiment. It's easier to do this. And so, I think there's many exciting varieties that are coming through right now. And the most exciting one for me is Fiano because it's white. We have finally found a white grape variety that works here and that people want to buy and can pronounce. And that's a big, big problem with a lot of these varieties.
Yeah. I saw one of them. Arnay.
Arnays.
I know. Well, it doesn't read on a menu.
No, and that's the funny part. Whereas
Jim Zarello came down with a beautiful one. Like, I'm trying to push it for him, and I'm like, Jim, I can't sell it. Like, I can't go around every table and say, try this wine.
Call it something different.
Well, and then there's the difficulty with that. It's like
sunshine and lollipops.
Yeah.
That'll sell. Speaking of selling wine, how's that side of it go for you? I struggle with it personally.
Oh, look, I can make more wine than I can sell. It's always the most difficult where you guys ask me all these questions about.
That's the golden rule, though. Joy de Fabio says don't make.
No.
Only pick what you can sell.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing. And it's certainly the hardest thing in this industry is to sell wine.
Are you feeling a downturn from with your business?
Yeah, it's huge. Everybody is feeling, you look at rollover dates. We're doing okay. I think we're about 13% down on last year. Okay. So we're not doing too badly, but we've been somebody that's gone and worked with restaurants for a long time. We make wines specifically for restaurants. We don't price our wines out of I respect the concept of value in wine. Just because I charge more does not mean that wine is better or worse. And so I hope our wines get picked by consumers in restaurants and they come off a list and people use them and drink them. And so we've focused a long time on dealing with restaurants. So we're doing better, but people are pulling their orders back and it's hard. It's really hard for everybody.
I can give you a personal story. I drank a bottle of one of your wines, I'm not going to say which one, at quite a well-known restaurant just last Saturday. And one of the reasons I bought it was, well, there were two reasons. One, because it was yours, and two, because I looked at the price and thought, that is fantastic value. And there are a lot of wines in this restaurant that weren't fantastic value.
Yeah, and we've, like, one of the criticisms of Patrick Walsh, is my agent in the Eastern Seaboard of Australia, said, your wines they're too intelligent for that price. It's like, you can't underestimate consumers. Like, I want them to be that way. I want my wines to be sold out. I don't want people to collect them. I want people to drink them. Yeah, with food. And I mean, that's part of one of the hallmarks of especially our red wines is they're more tannic. We make tannic wine, but that's because I'm not interested in judging, like having them with 100 different wines. I want somebody to sit down and enjoy a meal with them and have a really good time. And then you get that emotive connection back to the wine, and therefore that breeds a loyalty. Yeah. And it's really important to have good quality every time somebody buys you one. They might not like the style of it. That's fine, but you've got to deliver. You just, you have to.
Take me through we're right near there, the winery and the cellar door. And that. Can you take me through the evolution of that, how it started? You mentioned, obviously, you're up to over 100 acres of vineyard. Congratulations to that, because obviously they've taken a huge investment for yourself to procure.
Enormous. Yeah.
Well, tell me through the journey. How did you
so the first vineyard we bought was the Camellia vineyard. So that's out. It's very old vineyard planted in the late 1800s between Seaview, Cays and the original Tintara vineyard, sort of just up the back over here, Amory. That vineyard, I'd made half of the first Jimmy Watson winning wine from Hardy's, the first vintage we did of Eileen Hardy, we won the Jimmy Watson for, and half of it came off this particular vineyard, which was owned by a guy called Don Cant.
What variety was it?
It was Shiraz. And so I'd always loved this vineyard. It's a sort of 80-acre block, about 25 acres of vines and about 25 to 30 acres of native forest. So we have orchards and it's these vineyards in amongst all this forest.
And you're familiar with it, so that's a good
yes.
thing.
And I'd been annoying him for 17 years to sell this vineyard, and he is in Rotary, and my wife's father is high up in Rotary as well, and he sort of said, "Is Steve still interested?" So 2012 we bought that, and then we started that, and then I was consulting to Tapestry up on Oliver's Road, and they wanted to sell out of that. So we bought that the year, I think 2013. That's when we bought that. I don't think, is there a single grape variety left no, I think we've ripped out everything. There's one block of Shiraz left, no, 50-year-old Shiraz, and we've ripped out everything. And it's now full of Touriga, Grenache, Montepulciano, Aglianico, and Nero d'Avola.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's great. I really love making those wines. So we bought that. And then I've been making Nebbiolo out of the Adelaide Hills from Frank Baldasso up in Gumaraka, and he wanted to get out and sell that vineyard. So that would have been that was a sad story. So 2020 we bought that the week before the bushfires, and then we lost everything. Everything. We could have walked away from it, but we didn't. We sort of went through the process. We took the crop. It was all smoke tainted. So we've been working on that. So that's another.
Was that like a replant? Or?
Yeah, we didn't lose we lost an area of Chardonnay, which didn't bother me. I've replanted that with Riesling, but there was the smoke taint on the crop. So I'm the only idiot who's pulling Pinot Noir out of the Adelaide Hills. So yeah, we pulled it out. And we planted up there Barbera.
You still got nightmares from your first ton from Cajamardio.
No.
I'm not touching Pinot.
No, that's the funniest side of it. Like, Mum and Dad used to own part of a domain in Burgundy. So I've spent a lot of time in Burgundy, and I love Pinot Noir. But I think sometimes what we wish this country to be and what it is, I always say we wish it was cooler and it's only getting hotter. So we have to prepare for that. So I think sometimes it's too hot for Pinot Noir in this country.
Too fragile.
It's too fragile. And look, there's enough people trying to make Pinot, and some are very, very good. I don't have a problem with that, but they don't need me doing it as well. So I'm more interested in Nebbiolo. I think Nebbiolo is one of the grape varieties in the world, and I love the tannin in it. And that's what drives me. If you take one element of Nebbiolo away, if I take tannin away, it's no longer Nebbiolo. So I think we sort of underestimate the importance of tannin in red wines. Like, we talk so easily about varietal characteristics, but we don't talk about the varietal tannins in those particular wines. And Grenache here is so important, again, because it's so beautifully tannic. I'm trying to avoid, the hardest thing always with all the wines I'm making is to avoid sweetness. And so, when you cook, it's so easy to accentuate sweetness. The hardest thing is to sort of stop sweetness and to keep sort of dryness and elegance and sort of this tension in a wine. That's what I'm trying to do with it.
Perfect seasoning. Tell you, you're talking a lot about Neb, and you make wine in Italy.
Yeah. So in the minute I was at Hardy's and I said, "Oh, look, I want to go to Barolo and work." And they said, "Well, there's no point. There's like, you're not going to use any of this." And so I actually quit. I went home and told my wife I'm going to quit. And so she went, "You've got to stay another 3 months and then you get your 9 years long service leave." So
hang on.
My wife's really smart.
Is your wife a lawyer?
Yeah, she is. And
check
so
the payslip.
I waited the 3 months and then quit. And then we moved to the Barolo in 2004, and I had a 3-month-old baby and a 3-year-old baby.
Wow.
And I sort of went to work with this family, in Barolo, who I like family still to this day. And so, we lived and worked. I didn't get paid. I just wanted to make wine. So I walked in the door the first day and Aldo said to me, "Do you know much about Pinot?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Why?" He said, "Could you make it?" And sort of we went back 2 years ago and his wife said, I still dumbfounded the day that he sort of asked you to do that. So I made this Pinot. And he said, oh, that's really good. Do you know much about Riesling? I said, yeah. Why? He said, can you make that too? So I made that. And then from that point forward.
Like ripping out all the grapes.
Oh, no.
Please don't do this.
No, the white became the first white wine from Piedmont to get Tre Bicchieri in the Gambaro Rosso.
Wow.
And so he would send me to visit all the producers because he was like, Aldo was first a lecturer in agronomy, but also when you get married in Italy, someone before you get married talks to you about the birds and beasts, probably a superfluous action, but at any rate. So he would go to talk to everybody about what goes on when you get married. And so everybody knew him. And so he would send me to the Conternos and Giacosa and all these great producers to Dace.
Yeah.
And I'd come back and go, well, Aldo, they do this, this and this. And we developed all these techniques for making Barolos and Barbarescos and all these wines. It was just a wonderful, wonderful, I was in absolute heaven. I'm making wine again.
How long were you there for?
3.5 months.
Wow. Have you been back? And done
Yeah, many
subsequent
times.
vintage?
Actually, Finn just did vintage there 2 years ago. So Giuseppe said,
Sorry, yes.
my son.
Finn.
Yeah, and so Finn had a photo when he had purple hands, and Giuseppe went, has Finn got purple hands? It's like, when's he coming? So 2 months later, he's on a plane.
How good.
In Barolo, living and working with them. So, yeah, it's cool.
And you bring some of this wine over?
Yeah, we do. We bring the Vira wines into Australia.
I love that one.
Yeah, they're awesome. I mean,
My father-in-law loves it too.
yeah, nice
Can we
people
get him
make
from Crispian?
nice wines.
Another case. Pretend they're for the restaurant, but they just go straight.
Oh, that Dolcetto that they make is just absolutely cracking.
Are you the importer of that?
Yeah.
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 It's great.
Yeah.
Really.
So
really
you've got a few strings to your bow.
Yeah, I mean, we only import those. We had mucked around with a few things, but the Viras we sort of import. Well, we sell our own wine in South Australia now. Crispian looks after our own distribution, and that's been really good. Sort of I first worked with Crispian and Tom through Decant Wine years ago, so we put the team back together.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what's in that? What's on the cards? Tell me. I just want to go back for the. When did Celador and how did that evolve in offering? Because you do some pretty interesting events as well.
Yeah.
Some collaborations with restaurants.
Yep.
Some dance parties.
Yeah, so we've had De La Soul party.
Yeah, some big ones that we can hear down the hill.
We hear it. Don't worry. We hear
All my
it.
staff get really jealous. I'm like, you got to work today.
That was one of my highlights of my life, having De La
It's
Soul
huge.
play.
And on a wine label, one of your wine labels.
Yeah.
Right? It was take us through that.
Yeah, so I love 3 Feet High and Rising is one of the seminal albums of my life. I just love that album. So when I knew they were coming to play, I sort of said, oh, do you mind if I rip off some of your artwork and make a wine for you guys specifically? And it was the Montepulciano. So I ripped the pink and the blue and the little daisy, and I
Great
sent
label,
it to
great
them.
wine.
I sent it to them and said, are you okay with this? And they said, yeah, it's cool. So I came to play, and then they said, oh, can we have a photo together? So I did the rock and roll sign together, and my kids are going, Dad, you're so embarrassing. And they all went, we're dads too. And they're like, yay. They're right
totally.
into it. So that was cool. No, Celador, yeah, it's been a real journey for us with Celador, because when we bought the place, it was a wedding venue and a restaurant and all these things. And so we adopted this. I know the weekend after we signed it over, I was a line cook cooking prawns for the wedding for someone from the Port Adelaide Football Club, going, whoa, didn't really predict this. So
You were in there?
Yes, absolutely.
So good.
Because I love to cook.
Is that you already got these contracts going?
Yeah.
So I still got to see this through. I
So
love
I've
that.
got to see this thing through. So we saw it through, and we sort of had the wedding business for a couple of years. And then we had the restaurant, and then COVID sort of came, and we sort of sat down and went, look, the reason we do this is to make wine, and we're going down this track again that isn't ours. I'm not a restaurateur. I love food, but I have the utmost respect for especially you guys who do this. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. And for a Celador to be a profitable restaurant, we only do one service a day. We can't do two, and we probably do 2, possibly 3 settings a day a
No,
week.
it's a tough gig for
that work.
for wine brands, I think. Especially,
Yeah, and then you've got to have full-time staff to do this. Right. So it just can't add up. And so with COVID, we sort of dropped our hat and went, we've done what we can do. We'll focus our attention back on just making wine and selling wine. I'm happy to bring restaurants in for sort of sabbaticals whenever we can. My ultimate dream would to be have a yum cha restaurant in there full time.
Love that.
I would love to have just a yum cha place just going.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I'm
Yum cha.
happy.
Yum cha.
I'm happy to do it because we can fit anywhere from 10 people to 3,000 in that place.
So good.
It's
Oh my God,
been
3,000
everything.
person yum cha in McLaren Vale.
Yeah, and you used to do those once a week
Oh, yeah.
vintage.
Yeah, so and
Dinners,
I
which
will
are
get
great.
back. I just wanted a place where people can commune again with this trot thing. So we decided we'll make absolutely no money. All the staff come to work for free, and we just go, right, it's $20 a head. There's a course, and I'll put on a whole lot of different wines. We'll have a theme. People can bring them along, and a place for everybody who's coming to work in McLaren Vale from overseas, especially, can get to meet other people and to sort of commune and get together. So that was good. So we've done all these sorts of things, and we will get back to it. It's just the industry gets tougher and tougher and tougher. That's the hard part of this. So yeah.
What level of export was that? Were you relying on that? Were you talking about with some tariffs that were happening over in China? Or?
Look, no. So we're not.
Behaviour?
We're not a company that exports. So we'd exported. I think we haven't exported anything more than 10%. And I sort of say to people, look, I mean, if we are to talk about food miles in this world, and we're all going to have to come to terms with it, then I make wine for Australians unashamedly, and an Australian way of life. And that's where I want our wine sold and enjoyed. If somebody,
There's nothing wrong with that. It's brilliant.
No, and if somebody wants to enjoy them overseas, I don't think we make wine for the China market. It's just that's not where it fits. But it is interesting in America. We're seeing an uptick now in things, because initially they said, we're not going to buy Neradavos and
from Australia.
No, and Tempranos and Fianos and stuff like that.
They want Shiraz. And,
Not anymore. No, so they're all buying Nebbiolos and Tempranos and these sorts of things. So
New world, old world.
yeah, and it's what's happening. I mean, look, it's easier if I'm making a Portuguese red. Nobody has this like Burgundy, like, well, it's got to taste like this. And I don't have this, it's got to taste like this. I'm just making a yummy red wine that hopefully someone else will enjoy. And people can come to these wines totally open and go, do I like it or do I not? And that's the only question.
Can I talk about you saying, I want to understand why you said the market's getting harder. Is it getting harder with, do you believe, we spoke about this last week, which hasn't been uploaded yet, but behaviours of younger people maybe drinking less or not drinking at all?
Yeah, look, that is part of it. And there's still, if you look at, as a wine producing country, there's a lot of, and I'm part of the problem, obviously, importing foreign wine, but there's a lot of foreign wine that's sold on wine lists. The most expensive wine by the glass is champagne.
Yeah.
And then it's happening also with, there's this Chablis thing going on where everybody wants Petit Chablis. Like, it's nuts what's happening. And I don't know whether that's because a lot of sommeliers are Italian and French, or whether it's whether there's the problem of, if I see a wine in Dan's for $25, why should I pay $80 on a wine list?
Maybe it's because Australian people aren't working, typical Australian people aren't working in hospitality anymore. So you've got all these like new Italians. Like, half our restaurants changed so much.
They have changed.
And they don't see, and that comes down to an industry thing. It's like they don't see waiting or hospitality or front of house as like a career, whereas in Europe culturally it is
a career.
And then they start pushing their own agenda, which we got to stop. It's getting political. They start to port the Petit Chablis all over our wine lists.
Oh, look, and I mean, one of them's Italian. It's like, won't you make Italian grape varieties here? It's like, sure, I do.
And straight away they're like, that's not good.
They know. They haven't even put it in their mouth.
Yeah.
It was interesting. We did a event in London recently where David Gleaves, a great mate of mine, he owns Liberty Wines and imports our wines. And he's responsible for the River Cafe and Jamie Oliver and all these people understanding Italy. He's fabulous knowledge. And so he decided, I'm going to do this thing. We're going to put your Nebbiolo in with 6 other Nebbiolos with the best sommeliers from the whole of London. Not one of them got it right as to what was the Australian wine. One of them stormed out of the building. It's in complete anger.
It's like
What's going on? It's like
that French thing.
Yeah.
That was done years ago in Paris.
Yeah, and I think, look, our Fianos are good, and I like Neros. There's all these things coming on, and it's difficult for people to go, okay, these are okay, and they can be good. So, yeah.
Don't mind the dog. Let's go.
Yeah,
No,
I think it is. It's a chicken and the egg thing. I think Australian consumers aren't going to come on board with Australian wine until we make the wine that really suits the way we live and with the food, this food wine style rather than wine show style. We're having this debate. Our new Barso Grenache is pretty much a single vineyard off our own dry growing, and it's more tannic than the past. And Tom's like, but it's more tannic. And I said, well, why? Even if you've got a cheap Sangiovese or a cheap Chianti or a cheap Lunga Nebbiolo out of Italy, they're still tannic. Why does Australian wine have to be soft and gushy just because it's affordable? That doesn't make any sense to me. So that should be the selling point, that these wines are beautifully dry and have gorgeous structure that go with food.
Lip smacking, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a job to do.
Can I just go back to the business side of like how you market your brand with the touch points for consumers? Saying you're focusing on restaurant lists, stuff like that. Does that then is the plan that people will enjoy it enough that they'll want to look it up and take it home and then eventually come visit Celador?
So the big change. I mean, my wines are best enjoyed with food, and the way that you appreciate them. So how many times do you have a story of like you've been overseas, someone goes to Tuscany or someone goes to Provence, they come back and go, oh, I love this Provence rosé we had at a restaurant, or I love this Chianti. I was like, yeah, you're overseas, you're not with your kids, you probably had sex that morning.
Everything tastes better.
Everything tastes better because you're having the best day of your life. There's an emotional attachment to that.
I think Bourdain said it's like, even with the meals, like half of it is where you're at.
Correct.
Like pizza's going to taste better just because you're sitting on a street in Naples. You know
Correct.
what I mean? Like,
that's exactly right.
it.
So that emotional attachment, that's what I want to build back into wine. Not that some wine judge said this wine's worth 96, because that's a ridiculous concept.
Okay.
It's a bit like breakup songs where we were talking, again, this thing about music, where you are, what you are in your life, that emotional attachment to a song, I think that can happen with wine. So I would love our wine enjoyed, and this is where the whole industry changed, by the glass is so important. But where it disconnects a bit is that we make these very light wines that don't like to stay open. So sometimes you'll see a wine that's been open for 1 or 2 days that's dead. And so I try to make wine that can be poured by the glass and that someone's going to sit down, not know anything about it. And I think we go out now not to eat something that we can cook at home, and certainly not to drink something that we've drunk before. We go out to have an experience, a new wine, a new food, a new something or other. And so there is a part of the market, if I'm trying to sell a Shiraz, I'm one of 4,000. If I'm selling a Temptarigga, I'm one of 10 maybe. So you cut out a lot of the competitors and you can only have one Shiraz, and people are putting on new things. It's sort of by the glass lists are one of the exciting places to go. And so that's what's happening to people. They're going out, they're tasting this wine and go, hey, I really like that. It's slowly transitioning through into the bigger end of the market. So and Dan's and those things are changing with the wines that you drink. But generally people want lighter, more balanced wine, I think, with good tannin. And I think this is where the European wines still do have it over us a bit, in sort of that tannin style, that ability to cut through fat and to go with a dish. So that's where we've attacked the whole market. That's how we've done our whole thing. And then hopefully people come and see us or can order our wine online. And then I think we make now nearly about 30 different wines. So
wow.
Yeah, people can come and try the different varieties. And then we have a really good wine club.
So that's amongst blends.
Yeah, this wine club, we send out 2 times a year, whole mix of wines, and I put foreign examples. So if we've got a Temptarigga, we might have a Portuguese one, or if we have a Barbera, we'll have an Italian one, so people can see. It's an interesting thing to do, and people sort of get back to me all the time and say, oh, it's like some little present came of all these new things. So yeah, it's cool.
You've seen this man evolve.
Incredibly.
Well, just hearing what you're hearing then.
Well,
So what he's doing from
his underpants at Wirra. No, I mean, Steve is very highly regarded in the wine industry in Australia. Have you ever judged?
Yeah, I've been a chairman of the National Wine Show. I did a lot of judging.
What do you think of judging in Australia?
I think it's a skill that
as an ex-judge? Or
oh, look, I stopped. I have this bizarre thing called salicylate intolerance, which is aspirin's a salicylate. It's in all plants, tea. So I can't judge anymore, basically. I've got to be very careful. And so
What's that, like with the quantity of wine?
Yes, exactly. So it's in everything that grows above the ground. So all plants use it to defend themselves against insects. So after vintage, I've got to sort of have this purge diet and just clean.
No. Oh, wow.
So I've got to be careful about what I do. It's just overexposure, and it's fine.
Okay. Is that developed from overexposure?
I think so. Yeah, it's an intolerance. And so, yes, judging now is a concern for me. And the biggest concern is that, like, we're putting 200 wines up, and they've cut it back to about 120 wines a day. But what is a wine that I'd like to drink after I've done 120? Well, the answer is none.
None.
Sure. I want a cocktail or a beer or a gin and tonic or something like that. So there's something that's flawed about the process. But in doing that, you have to understand, okay, I'm not going to want to reward tannic wine, but I sort of have to. And so you need this skill, and I worry a lot about the results that have been coming out. Where
But you love tannic wine.
Yes, I do, but that's the problem. It can't be judged like that.
Because you're just blowing out everyone's mouth.
Yeah, so what you pick is these soft, sweet, gushy wines.
I understand what you're saying.
And then you go to a consumer and go, this is the best example, and this wine's $25. It's like people are going, well, are you playing the Mickey out of me, or what the hell are you doing? So I think people need...
Like, in context, I just had another 100 wines and I can't enjoy anything with tannin because it's killing me.
So these two processes don't mesh unless you have people that have a lot of experience that can direct it in a way, cut classes down into specific sub-regions and I think that's the wine show was there as a sort of quality parameter or a guiding light for the rest of the industry for what Len Evans set up. These days it's playing catch up with everybody else. And, you know, I think one of the greatest examples is Grenache. The Grenaches that tend to get picked are the sweet, lolly water, simple, less than a year old faux Pinot wines, whereas everybody else is making these beautiful, structured, fine, tannic wines. So there's a disconnect between these things. It's not insurmountable, but there is work to do with regard to it.
Are you drinking other wines from the region?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, lots. I mean, I think what Pete Fraser's doing is some awesome things. I think Ministry of Clouds, there was a great Sanso blend that they did the other day. I'm wherever I can. I mean, the funniest thing about my son is he is vehemently Australian. So he said, we are only drinking Australian. So whenever he drags anything out, it's Australian. And it's like, I don't want to see that French muck. Show me the best Australian wines and why I'm drinking it. It sort of like keeps me on my toes.
So you still enjoy wine outside the wine?
Oh, I love, like, it's a funny thing. There's a lot of fat alcoholic winemakers. You have to be careful. So it's a love. When I'm away from it, I'm away from it. And when I'm with it, I guard it as a gift, this love of wine. So I try to keep this balance so that this passion and this flame just keeps burning. So I don't, because it's all encompassing everywhere you go. My doctor, my dentist are like, oh, wine, let's talk about it. It's like, so and
it's
always
not getting away from it.
You're a bottle shop. So I'll go that second because I just want to try that other Grenache from the other person.
Yeah, what's my favourite wine? My wife goes, you should own a wine company that just buys wine for people. It's like, yeah, I'd be happy doing that. Probably make more money. But anyway.
No, it is a big balance. And like, you know, it's like you can love it too much.
Yes. I mean, it's anything. You just, maintain the relation, maintain the rage.
Surfing's good.
Yes, I'd surf a lot. I sort of...
To keep the belly off.
I cook. I love to cook. So
does Lee. You're always cooking something, Lee.
Yeah, always. My wife calls me the feeder. So I'm always cooking.
And does she ever?
No, like anything. Like I cook absolutely. Like I've made all my own preserved lemons at home. I make Middle Eastern. I make Italian. I sort of just find recipes and cook.
Like start breaking out my repertoire.
He's so very Italian.
All these. I know it's hard just to not look at the.
You go to his place for dinner. It's pasta.
Yeah, but I mean, there's something to conquer with Italian.
If you have people over dinner, it's a good one though, because you have to sit there at the stove. Like, you know, it's like come out, sit there with some water done, then you mix it, you sit down, you eat.
So how do you go out to get a really good carbonara? It's hard.
And try cooking carbonara for quantity. That's
no, you cannot.
Yeah.
You
go to Rome. That's where you go.
Very
you go to Luciano's in Rome, and my dad and Tim and I were there, and like in May.
Oh, were you?
So good.
I want to go. It's my 60th next year, so I want to go and live.
I think we're doing. We're going to do carbonara. You can come Sunday night.
Oh, are you?
Dad's got his own guanciale ready.
Oh, has he?
And we're doing it on Sunday night for staff dinner.
Sunday.
And we got these two. We got two Lucas at Pete's Tech now.
What time?
5:30. This won't be up. I think so. It's fine. 5:30. This Sunday, be there. It's over. But he's made his own guanciale, and instead of the pancetta, of course, it's like the cured cheek. But that's what you should be using. But they're so small.
I know.
And the pigs here are a little bit smaller too. So by the time you've done them all, it comes down and it shrinks down. It's tiny little bits need like 20 pigs' heads to feed up the army like us. But
I love how that was like used out of necessity as a leftover.
Now it's
now it's the sought after bit. It's sort of crazy.
Yeah, it's really hard to do on quantity though. Like there are ways of doing it, and carbonara is like that's. See, if you were like treating like each pasta dish like a different wine variety, that'd be one like a Pinot or a Grenache, like whether they could stuff up quite easily. I think.
Or cocktails. So difficult to make. Like the simplest ones are the hardest.
Yeah,
and it's the same in cooking.
It's just easy.
I love how when you start cooking, you go right. What's got the most ingredients? So you find these things, these curries with 20 different spices, and then eventually you get down to the ones that got 3 ingredients, and they're the hardest. They're the ones to master.
Yeah,
exactly. I love it.
Right.
No, anything else there, Lee, for you? Well, we do like to talk about McLaren Vale.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we have talked about McLaren Vale quite a lot.
Yep.
And yourself. But how do you feel about it as a region and where it's heading? And is there anything, you love about it or dislike about it? I'd like to see it doing more of.
Yeah, there's the debate right now is like, how do we get people to drink more Shiraz, or is this change to all alternatives the way forward? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I know what suits my ideologies and what I think, and I think there's always this struggle that goes on, I suppose, that if winemaking is an art form, and that's a conversation in itself, then for me it tends to be a very boring art form. If a lot of art forms are about breaking boundaries, not sort of locked in by them. Sticking.
You're punk rock. You got the punk rock winemaker.
Yeah, exactly. So you actually, instead of just taking history and replicating it over and over and over again, the great artists actually took it and saw something beyond that point. And I was watching a show recently.
I don't know how you say that to an Italian though as well. Like, you got the Italian wine industry. You spent time there. Surely.
Yeah, lots.
They're like all the great ones there are defined by rules.
Well, that's what I find funny about, like, when you cook this orecchietta, you've got to do this.
Oh, yeah.
You can't do that. You can't do that. So I go, well,
why not?
Well, actually, you guys didn't have pasta when this started. Somebody changed something and somebody did something.
Have you heard about all this new pasta jamming that's happening? Like, it's like Asian ingredients on top of like Italian recipes, and it's like this huge new thing that's happening. It's awesome.
I think it's cool. Like, we have to invent our food.
Like vongole with exo.
Excellent.
You know what I mean?
I mean, there's a lot more chili in vongole than there used to be.
Yes, I've also noticed
that. Well, I mean, what's a stir fry?
Yeah, exactly.
With noodles.
Yeah, chuck a noodle in.
It's like, it's spaghetti. It's like, there has to come.
How about Main Street McLaren Vale? Let's try to solidify it back down to McLaren Vale.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of that, I watch sometimes, and sometimes I feel like a salmon or a trout swimming in the wrong direction. Like, it's sort of like, what the hell am I doing? And there's times where you sit there just questioning, going, am I doing the right thing? Am I trying to change too many things? But I was watching this show on Monet, and when Monet first painted his paintings, he sort of did an exhibition with all these people, and it was panned. Everybody hated what he did. And that went through all of his life. And then he got to the end of his life and he painted the Lily paintings. And he painted these paintings because of the end of World War I as a sort of way for people to be contemplative. He put them up in the orangery. And again, everybody hated them, did not like them at all. In fact, they put exhibitions in front of them. They were hidden for more than 30 years. It took Rothko and these American artists to come back to get them popular, because there was a painting of his in New York that they loved, and they came to visit this. And then slowly but surely in 1996, they built a gallery back. So it took all this time for people to understand. So I understand that people who are going to change the narrative of this place are not necessarily going to be the most popular at all. And it takes patience, I suppose. And I think there's so many of us now.
And not get results immediately.
No, you're not going to.
No.
And I think that's the thing that I've come to accept, that I'm not going to be, and lots of people don't understand our wine at all. And I get that. I'm making it for me, and I hope there's other people that love them. And that's all I can do. I can satisfy the urge inside of me in an artistic way, in a creative way, same as what we talked about with music, that it's there. That's the thing that I'm satisfying, and I hope people like them. That's all I can do.
It's cool, because stepping back into how the vehicle of sharing your art form, your wine with people, is the restaurant. So it's almost like the restaurant become your little reps themselves.
Correct.
And then go, cool, they've got their own followers and their tribe, and then it spreads like that.
Yeah, and you're getting people at a happy time where, the kids are at home and you're there with your wife.
The restaurant that's looking for like, triple my money on one pour of wine.
No.
You want a restaurant owner that's going, this is a really cool wine.
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah.
This is honest.
You don't want it to be in like the hotel group here and there and everywhere, do you?
No. You want it that this place.
Nothing against hotel groups.
No. You want it where people are sitting down and having a lovely time, and
and anchoring back to that memory, and then they remember that time you asked me out, and
we had that wine.
Get married.
I can remember the first wine I ever bought my wife was a bottle of Bilcar Rosé. And like, for that point forward, every anniversary or whatever we can, or wherever we see it, you go, okay, darling. It's like, so that's what I'd love to build back into wine, that emotional attachment.
That was the most romantic line we've had. I don't know how many
ever in all these podcasts. Yeah.
On that romantic note. Lee,
we're going to call it quits, I think.
Thanks, guys.
it's been amazing. I really look forward to continue to taste and see it evolve.
Thank you very much
Thanks
for
for sharing.
supporting it. I can't do it unless people drink it.
Right on, man.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Tales from the Vale. Be sure to like and follow us, TFTV Podcast, on Facebook and Instagram.
To stay up to date with all things Tales from the Vale, be sure to join our mailing list. Just visit our website, talesfromthevale.com, to sign up. You can email us at hello@talesfromthevale.com for any advertising and general inquiries.